Thank you, everyone, for showing up or for signing in and attending this Restarting Research Town Hall. As Annette said, I do want to say a couple of things before we get started. As Annette said, the meeting is being recorded. The slides will be available on the Grove School of Engineering website at the conclusion of the town hall meeting, and the chat function. So we're going to keep everyone muted, but if during the presentation you have questions, feel free to add them in the chat function. And if I don't get to them, then Annette Pineda will help as we end the presentation. We will go through the information in the questions in the chat. The presentation is about 30 minutes long, I'm hoping. And that'll leave about 30 minutes for questions and answers. I think that's everything that I wanted to say ahead of time. So let's just get started here. All right, how about that one? Okay, so to start off, I just want to set the stage about COVID-19. This data was as of the 16th, which was yesterday. And if you look at the confirmed deaths and the probable deaths, here in the city of New York, we're over 20,000 deaths. Now, that's serious. And we probably all know someone who's either been infected and maybe even passed away as a result of the COVID-19. So as we do this restarting of the research, we have to be cognizant of the fact that we're trying to do it safely in terms of doing research safely, but also in terms of COVID-19 and not exposing our students, our faculty, our researchers unduly to the COVID-19 virus. Looking at the cases in New York City, we're doing great. You know, we spiked in April at over 6,000 cases per day. But down here now in June, I think this is actually, you know, in the teens, maybe 20s per day. We've really done a great job in terms of our social distancing and taking care of the cases. We can see the same in the hospitalizations. You know, sometimes in the news now, they're talking about, oh, we're reporting more cases because we're doing more testing. But if you look at the hospitalizations, that's where the real data is in terms of how many people are being hospitalized and how many people are passing away. And again, we spiked here in April. I think this number is over 500 per day in terms of our deaths. And now we're down here in the teens. So we in the city of New York have done a great job. And what we're trying not to do when we restart research at City College is go backwards. Speaking of going backwards, we all watch the news and we see what's happening in other states across the country. Other states have reopened and their number of reported cases has started to grow. In some cases, it never really stopped. We know from today, I think Arizona and Texas, they are pausing their reopenings, but nobody's actually going backwards. But we in New York, these are our cases, and this is the state of New York, not the city, but this is New York State. And we definitely don't want to go backwards on this curve, to start increasing our number of cases. And that's what we're trying to do when we restart research at City College slowly. We don't want to go backwards on this curve. So as you're probably aware, on June 8th, the city of New York entered phase 1 of the reopening. It just so happens that higher education research is included in the phase 1 reopening plan for New York State. We are in phase 1 in New York City. So by all, theoretically, we should be able to open higher research today or even on June 8th, higher education research. But what was also included in that document from New York State were mandatory guidelines for employers that have to be addressed before research can restart. And those guidelines were in the area of physical distancing, protective equipment, cleaning and disinfection, communication about the COVID-19 virus, and also in screening. So even though higher education was included in the phase 1 research, institutions have to meet these guidelines before reopening. And that's what we've been working on in City College, is how to address these guidelines. So let me first say again that we ought to congratulate ourselves because we're having this conversation. We have been able to talk to CUNY and decouple the in-person classroom instruction returning to campus from the research aspect returning to campus. That was a huge accomplishment that we have made. We're talking about a gradual approach in terms of coming back on campus. And we as researchers are going to be the guinea pigs of coming back onto campus. So we've got to get it right. We're being looked at not only by City College, but by CUNY and also by the city and the state. So we've got to get this right when we do it. So we must do it safely in terms of masks, in terms of social distancing, also our C14 certification. Remember, we are in some cases doing or requesting to do what's deemed as hazardous research. So when we come back into the labs, we need to have our C14 in place. We need to have our safety protocols in place, and that's what we're working on now. All of this work that we're going to talk about today has been in conjunction with CUNY, ASRC, science, and the medical school. We've all been trying to figure this out together, and we want to implement something that can be done across campus and then in specific buildings as deemed necessary. So the overall plans are for CUNY, City College, and then specifically today, we're going to talk about Steinman, the overall plans for Steinman. So again, where are we in this staging of our research? Back in April, March, April, May, we were in stage 0, meaning only essential research was allowed, essential personnel were allowed on campus. Only essential personnel were allowed in Steinman. The research that was happening in Steinman was only COVID-19 related research. We are now in stage 1. We're in the planning stage where we're preparing to get back into the building to start research. We really should not have any research going on that's not COVID-19 related. Everything we're doing at this point is planning to get back on campus. And those numbers at the bottom represent occupancy, meaning we're estimating that we have 10 to 15% building occupancy during stage 1. We're trying to get to stage 2. Stage 2 would be when we start time-sensitive research, maybe some field-based research, and we're trying to keep those numbers between 20 and 25% occupancy. And in stage 2, we're not there yet. We have not been authorized to enter stage 2, but that's where we're trying to get to. Stage 3 would be a further ramp up, a gradual ramp up where we increase our numbers potentially to 50 to 60%. And then stage 4 is what we're calling our new normal, where we probably won't get back to 100%. Maybe we're somewhere between 85 and 100%. And the reason for that is we're encouraging everyone during no matter what stage this is. If you can do your research from home, do it from home. If you can perform your research remotely and you don't need to go back into the campus, into the building, into Steinman to do your research, do it remotely. That's what we're asking for everyone, no matter what stage we're in. I also want to say that initially we were calling our city college research phases, but it was becoming confusing as to our state phases, our city phases, and our city college phases. So we termed our city college phases as stages. So we have our stage research plan for city college. I might go back and forth between the terms, but technically city college is in stages. But what we're saying here is that our state phases don't necessarily have to match our city college stages. So theoretically, we could enter stage 2 before the city of New York enters phase 2. Now, I just heard on the news today that the governor and the mayor are discussing whether the city of New York can enter phase 2 on Monday. But regardless of that, we know that higher education research is permitted to go into stage 2. All right, just to be clear, we can also move backwards in our stages, just the same way the city can move backwards in their phases. So we'd like to continue to progress from left to right. But if things don't work well and we're monitoring the situation as we go through, we can go backwards, and we don't want to do that. That's why we're trying to do this slowly, thoughtfully, and safely. However, if New York City regresses, it's a good bet that City College will also regress. So we've heard Cuomo, we've heard de Blasio out there saying people are not wearing masks in the city of New York. People are going to bars and not social distancing. So we want to also encourage our neighbors that we want the city of New York to continue to move forward in their phases and not go backwards. That would help us as well. So again, we're currently in stage 1, planning to prepare to get on campus, get in the buildings, to open to do research. So in this phase, we have equipment preparation. We have the plans that some of the PIs have submitted, and we're trying to obtain approval to conduct on-site research. Specifically, let's talk about stage 2, where we're trying to get to. How is it that we can keep our numbers down to 20 to 25% building occupancy in stage 2? We have to prioritize the research. Which researchers or what types of research should come back to campus first? We're saying that, and these are just suggestions, we're saying that anything that where if you're not collecting data immediately, you might have a catastrophic loss of data or your project may be delayed. There may be some seasonal research. You have to do some kind of data collection in the summer. Therefore, you need to be on campus and in the building to do that research. Long-term studies that have been going on for 2, 3, 5 years, you still need to collect data for those longitudinal studies. Animals, maybe a delay would cause colony loss, but those are the types of experiments that need to be considered for stage 2. Also, graduate students and postdocs, they may be close to completing their work and they just need a little bit more data. And they should be given priority to come back into stage 2. As well as if you're writing a paper and the reviewer said I need to do a couple more experiments and then I can go back home and finish writing the paper. Those are the kinds of research that come in stage 2. We know NSF and NIH have been understanding, so to speak, about deadlines, but some agencies may not have been. So that you have a grant deadline, September 30th, hopefully it's not June 30th, September 30th, or some kind of deadline that has no flexibility, and that you need to pay your students because whatever funding agency says no salary, no work, though if the students aren't working, they shouldn't be getting paid. And then another possibility is untenured faculty. Those are things that we're asking departments to consider in terms of bringing back research into stage 2. So if you want to take a look at these reopening New York guidelines for higher education, it's online. That's the link. I probably won't remember that, but it's also on our City College research homepage, that link. If you haven't had a chance to review it, it might be a good idea to review the mandatory guidelines set in place by New York State for higher education research institutions to reopen. And those are guidelines specifically for employers and also employees. So what are we asking you to do now? To progress from stage 1 to stage 2, we're asking you to complete and submit the online research reopening plan. We've received a number of plans from PIs and researchers in Steinman. Excuse me, but you remember the initial goal is only 25% occupancy or less. We can manage that potentially by rotating our personnel. So some people may come in on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Other people may come in on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Some people may come in the morning. Some people may come in the afternoon. So when we do generate lists for Steinman, I anticipate the numbers will be larger than 25% of students and faculty on the list. But the idea is that they will be rotating in and out of the building. No one will be there for 12 hours a day, every day. The idea is people come in, they collect the data that they need, and then they go back to remote locations to analyze the data. These online forms have and are continuing to be reviewed by what we call the RRB, the Research Reopening Review Board. And the template, the actual submission form explains or asks you to explain why is it that you need to be included in that 25%. And the final approval is given by the provost as to whether this submittal form has been approved and your desire to come back has been approved. Just to say that, again, we are trying to make sure that we're doing this concurrently with meeting these mandatory guidelines for employers. And what are those guidelines? So you've submitted your plan and the approvals are being rolled out now. Some people may have already started receiving these approval emails from the RRB. And in that email, it outlines things that researchers must do along with the things that we are trying to do to make sure we're ready to open. So for instance, 6 feet distance. We must maintain our distancing while we're in the building. That's in our labs, that's in our common areas, meaning as we enter the building, by the elevators, potentially in the stairwells, we must keep our 6 feet distancing. Protective equipment. Masks must be worn upon entering the building and all common areas. So we anticipate you will have your own mask because you need a mask when you're walking around in New York City. But if you come into Steinman without a mask, you will be provided a surgical mask. And that mask must be worn when you're in the common areas of the building. If you're in your lab and whatever you're working with does not require a mask, and you may even be alone in your lab, you can take the mask off. But if there's someone else in the lab with you and you're practicing social distancing, then I advise keeping the mask on. But you are allowed to take the mask off if you're practicing social distancing in your lab. If you're running an experiment and you want to go back to your office for a few minutes to wait while that experiment concludes or finishes, you can take your mask off. But if someone else is coming into your office, if you're sharing office space, then you need to keep your mask on. Another requirement of the New York State guidelines is that we have cleaning and disinfection, and logs must be maintained documenting the frequency of that cleaning and disinfection. So facilities is working to clean what we call our common areas. But let me back up and say that the common areas inside of Steinman, for instance, conference rooms are going to be closed. We don't want people hanging out in conference rooms. The lobby area inside of Steinman will be closed. We're not congregating in those areas. But what I'm calling common areas are like outside the elevators, the stairwells, the elevator buttons. Facilities is cleaning the restrooms. Facilities is cleaning that. What we've asked is that the labs also maintain documentation about frequency of cleaning and disinfection. The labs will be provided a spray bottle with disinfectant and cloths to be used. That's going to be provided by facilities for every lab that is open. And we're asking that the PIs responsible for those labs ensure that a log is maintained documenting the frequency of cleaning. Communication, another thing we had to ensure was that we have signs posted explicitly outlining these guidelines and making the CDC recommendations known to everyone who's in the building. We have those signs posted in Steinman now. We will ask that lab owners also post signs in their labs. And these are simple CDC signs that you can print out and just post in your labs. But we want to make, right now we're good, but we want to make sure that the labs that are opening also post signs. And then the last thing that we were working on that took the most time was our screening. The guidelines require that we ask everyone 3 questions upon coming into the building. And so we could have a piece of paper and a pen at the security desk and ask everyone to fill out a form when they come in. But that would mean that someone has to collect the forms and type in the information. And so we were trying to see, is there a better way? And Dean Perkins out of science and Daniel, who works with the core facilities in science, were able to come up with an app that can be used to address the mandatory screening requirements. And as we say, things are changing daily here. So these slides discussing the app have been modified slightly, but this is just to give you the gist of the app. So once you've submitted that template to restart research and you receive your approval from the RRRB to come back to campus and into Steinman, then you'll also receive a link to this app. And the first thing you'll be asked to do is register. So registration, this also generates a log for us to know who has been and will be coming into Steinman. So everyone must register for our campus visitor log. After you register, and you only need to register once, after you register, you will be asked to complete the 3 to 4 questions. So initially there were 3 questions. We kind of morphed it a bit into 4 questions, but basically the questions are, have you been exposed to anyone with COVID-19? Have you yourself been diagnosed with COVID-19? Or do you have symptoms of COVID-19? Basically, but it's turned into 4 questions now. If you answer yes to any of those questions, then you should not return to campus, no matter what, whether you've been authorized, whether your research is just about to really, blow up, not literally blow up, but cause problems if you don't come in. If you answer yes to any of those questions, you'll receive the notification that you should contact the COVID-19 hotline, that you should contact your healthcare provider, and that you should not come in. If you answer no to all of the questions, then you will be given a pass to come in. You will be given a green circle on your phone that says you can come into Steinman on that specific day. Now, these questions have to be answered every day that you come into Steinman. And so the procedure will be, the security guard will check first the list to see if your name is on the list. They will also ask to see your CCNY ID to make sure you're authorized to be in the building and on campus. And then the guard will also ask for your phone to see if you have the green symbol that says you've completed the required questionnaire. If you happen to forget to do the required questionnaire and you come to the building without that green symbol, you can pull it up on your phone and complete it quickly. But the guard will ask for those 3 pieces of information: your CCNY ID, make sure your name is on the list of authorized personnel coming to campus and coming into the building, and your validation that you have completed the health screening questionnaire. So, main question, when will Steinman reopen? We don't know. We do not know. We anticipated it would be this week. This is Wednesday, it hasn't happened. What are we waiting for? We've submitted our plans to CUNY. We being City College. ASRC has submitted their plans to CUNY. I heard that College of Staten Island is about to submit their plans to CUNY. We're encouraging Hunter to submit their plans to CUNY. CUNY has not authorized any of the plans yet. We're in constant communication. The president, the provost, we're in constant communication with CUNY asking you, do you need additional information? But they have not approved any plans as of yet, but it's imminent. It's imminent. In conjunction, we have been working to complete those mandatory guidelines. And pretty much we can check those off right now. The health screening tool finished literally last night, and we think it's working. We've tested it, but we will know for sure when we test it with a number of researchers. The building, in terms of the cleaning, is still going on. The hand sanitizer stations are still being put in place. But once we get the authorization from CUNY, we feel like we are far enough along that we can open the building. So if it doesn't happen this week, we're hoping it's going to happen next week. And what do we do while we wait? First of all, make sure you've submitted the restart plan if you wish to be part of the 25%. Once your research plan is reviewed and approved, you will receive the email to the health screening app. Make sure you register. You can do that immediately. Once you receive the approval from the RRB, you can register with the health screening app. You can continue to analyze. I know we've been doing this for 3 months. How much analysis can I do of my data? How many papers can I write? How many proposals can I write? Lots. You can continue to plan your research. This is great think time. So continue. And also get tested. The city of New York is asking that all New Yorkers get tested, whether or not you have symptoms or you're at high risk. Reason being, we know that there are asymptomatic folks out there, and as much knowledge as we can have in City College regarding whether or not you're positive or negative for COVID-19 helps us in the City College community. Now, arguably, you can test negative today and you'll be positive tomorrow. But the little bit of information that we have regarding whether or not you have COVID-19 will help us as we step through our phases. When we come back, and we will get back, we have to remember that we have to do it safely. One of the things that concerns us is that because of these low numbers, we may have single individuals working in labs, which we know is not always the safest way. So we want to make sure that people communicate with one another. I'm going in, are you going in? I'm in lab ABC and there's someone down the hall in lab EFG. So communication is the key. We're working together, we've got to take care of one another. Oh, the other thing I was going to say about that, and I'll say it a little bit now and a little bit later, is that we're open from 7 to 7, say for instance, Monday through Friday. We're open from 7 to 7. If you know that the work that you're doing is potentially hazardous, I highly recommend you do that work between 9 and 5, when emergency personnel may be available. You don't want to do that work in the later hours or even on the weekends, when it may take longer for someone to help. So I recommend that we keep our safety in mind, as well as getting back to do our research. See something, say something. That's what people say all the time, but we have to protect one another. So who do you say something to if you see something? If you're a student, your advisor or mentor is the first person you reach out to. If you're uncomfortable for any reason, if perhaps you don't feel comfortable coming to campus as a student, you should let somebody know. We don't want to force anybody who is not comfortable in the environment to be in the environment. So that can be, if you're a student and you're uncomfortable, you may reach out to your chair, you may reach out to me, Associate Dean for Research. Let someone know. If you're a faculty member and you see something, you want to say something, you can reach out to your chair, you can reach out to HR, you can reach out to me. All right, finally, I'm a little bit over 30 minutes, but finally, one piece of good news that I think has come out of this is that these will be the hours of operation for CDI, Marshak, and Steinman, meaning security will be on campus in Steinman from 7 to 10, Monday through Friday, and from 7 to 7 on Saturday and Sunday. We've finally been able to get Steinman to be open for research on Sundays. So that means that you can spread out. Everybody doesn't have to come in on Monday morning when we open up, if we open up. We can spread out 7 days a week. We can spread out. And then the other, what I think it's good news. I don't know if it's new news or not, but the parking passes, that information went out on earlier this week. PhD students may apply for St. Nicholas Terrace parking passes beginning the 22nd of June. So if your students wish to drive rather than taking public transportation, you can do so, we can apply to do so on Monday. All right, I think that's it for me. So questions, we're asking you to submit them through the Zoom chat function, and I will.
Okay, so the first question is stage 4, the final and perpetual stage. In other words, 2 years from now, are we still going to try to stay at 85% occupancy?
I don't know if I can answer that question. We have to see what the state's doing. We have to see what the city's doing. We don't know where we will be 2 years from now. I certainly don't. What the point of that is that if you can work remotely, you should work remotely. If you're doing theoretical work, we want you to continue to do your theoretical work remotely.
Thank you. A large number of people may just need to come in briefly to turn things on and reset them or pick up items. Can we work this into the plan to get these little tasks done in a way that may control occupancy for short visits? Great
question. So what we have been doing is if you feel like you need to just come in to pick something up, we can continue that. We are not necessarily counting those people into our 20-25% numbers. So what I'd ask to do is that, you know, you reach out to your chair, you reach out to me as to, I need to come in and pick up this paper that's in my office because I'm writing a journal article, or I'm writing a proposal, and I just need to pick up this paper. Yeah, we can work with that. And we're not asking you to fill out the restarting research template for that kind of activity. What we're interested in are experimental researchers that are going into their labs for the research restart template. But if you just need to come in to pick something up, just let your chair know and let me know, and we can work that into the process. The other thing is, you've heard me on my soapbox, VPN access. If you need access to your computer, we would prefer that you sign up for VPN access so that you can access your computer files from home. Now, if you haven't set that up already, then you will need to go in and do some modifications to your computer along with the help of Yusef or someone from IT over the phone. And then he will help you set up for VPN access so you can access your computer remotely no matter what. And so that also cuts down on the number of requests that I need to get a file from my computer. So we will also make sure that everybody who needs to access their computer can access their computer remotely.
Can cleaning logs be maintained electronically?
Yes. Oh, that's another thing that I didn't say. And Susan helped me out with this one. Your plan has to, another requirement of the New York State guidelines is that your plan has to be displayed in your lab, your research restart plan, the ones that you submitted to get approval to come back into your lab. That has to be displayed. Your logs, that's a good, to me, I like electronic. And so I would say, yes, your logs can be electronic such that if they need to be printed, if someone else needs access, it's not an immediate access. So yes, they can be electronic, but you should be able to print them out upon request.
And Susan, you're unmuted if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess my feeling is if you're talking about cleaning a piece of equipment that might be used by multiple users in a given day, I would keep that on paper and printed. I think it'll be more efficient just to, but the other, aside from the guidelines, I think we've been trying to tell people, and I use the silly image, you know, if you've been, well, women will get this more than men. If you go into an airport bathroom, you press the green button, it gives you the new guard on the toilet, right? You do it before you sit down, not necessarily after. In other words, the best practice is to clean whatever you're going to be using before you use it. That's the only way you have 100% surety that it's been cleaned before you touch it.
So there are two different issues here. So core facilities, I think, is what Susan's talking about in terms of equipment that's used by multiple users. As she said, I would highly recommend cleaning it prior to use, but we also ask researchers to clean it after use. So it's kind of like in the gym. Before you go to use a piece of equipment, you want to clean it off, but after you use it, you're also asked to clean it off. But the other logs that we need are logs that clean your labs. Now, the counters of your labs, that is something that needs to be cleaned routinely. What's routinely? Is it hourly? Is it daily? That's something you can establish, something you and your students are comfortable with, but those logs have to be maintained as well.
Is there a recommendation on the frequency of cleaning during the time someone is in a lab?
That's why. So in my mind, I would think that that there's questions as to how long the virus lasts on surfaces. So I personally would ensure that the labs are cleaned daily, but I think that's up to the labs managers and how often those labs are being used and how often, what you're doing in those labs. And so I think that's up to the individual labs.
Okay. Can we make sure CUNY Grad Center IDs are permitted?
Yes, yes. I'm not sure if that's been a problem, but if you're on the list for Steinman and you present a CUNY Grad Center ID, you should be able to get into the building.
Okay. Regarding testing, is there a preference on which test is completed, the nasal swab, the antibody, or both?
I don't know. No, I don't have a preference. And I think there are disputes going on as to which ones are more accurate. That's between you and your physician or you and your healthcare, or so no. City College does not have a recommendation on that.
Okay. Is there going to be a difference in how we treat human versus animal research during this time? I'll expand. With human research, we are not just putting ourselves at risk, but our subjects.
So, and Susan, you can weigh in on this one too, because Maria, I don't know if Maria's on there. You have a lot of human subject research as well. We're asking that based on the New York State guidelines, you prepare a plan for human subjects research. We have not excluded human subjects research, but the plan must be there as to how you're protecting yourself, how you're protecting the people that you're working with from the virus. So that has to be detailed before the research is approved to continue. There's also IRB that has to be in place before, and there are continuing IRB updates that have to be in place prior to this resuming. So that's another issue as well. Anything you want to add, Susan?
Yeah, I would just, I'd echo, according to New York State guidelines, they didn't make a distinction in terms of human subjects, but there hasn't been an official ruling, but I would encourage anybody who uses human subject research to maybe delay it till at least stage 3. That would be sort of the 50% or more. So in other words, let's get a low number of people on campus and make sure that our protocols are in place and are working safely before we expose non-staff, non-faculty, non-CCNY stakeholders to campus. That would be my guidance.
Any other questions on that?
What would be the process for external collaborators that have instrumentation on Steinman and need access? For example, there's some from DOD and National Lab.
So we've talked about this in one of our meetings. And once we resume research on campus, then those external visitors would have to complete the questionnaire, and they would also have to register, but they are allowed in the building.
And we just have a news update. The governor announced that New York City will start phase 2 on Monday.
Wow.
And you answered this, but I just want to make sure that that we have a clear answer. For phase 1, you envision some staff coming in to prepare. When will those staff be approved and by whom?
So the staff that have been approved for phase 1 are already there. So that's an individual call in terms of Steinman. So if you're interested in coming in to prepare equipment, to check water lines, to make sure that your lab can be safely restarted, then let me know. But it's not the time to come in to do research. It's to prepare.
And this is a question on parking passes that I'm not sure if you have the answer to, but are external researchers that are not CUNY employees also eligible for St. Nicholas Terrace passes?
I don't think so. Like, I don't know for sure, but that hasn't been the case in the past, and I don't think that has changed. You may want to check with parking about that.
Okay, there's a couple of additional parking questions, so I'm going to just direct those to the public safety office.
Yeah.
So this is how occupancy is defined: number of person per square footage.
So for instance, and this is a loose definition. So if we had 100 people in Steinman, that's our occupancy of Steinman, then what we're looking at is 20 to 25 people there at one time. We're also looking into regions and floors. So we don't want everybody congregated on the 3rd floor. We don't want all 20 people on the 3rd floor, for instance. So we're asking that the chairs and also the safety committee is looking at how will our occupancy be distributed throughout the weeks, throughout the days. So what we're looking at though is not square footage, and we haven't said, some schools have put in numbers like 3 people per, I think it's 1,000 square feet. We haven't put those numbers in place. What we're trying to say is that, we're going up from the lab. If your lab has 10 people, then we're hoping to have 2 to 3 people, if they can social distance, in that lab at one time. If your floor has 20 people, we're hoping to have about 5 people on that floor, as long as they can social distance. And these, I know there's some regions like C51, for instance. huge. And to have 20 to 25% of the people in C51 would be everybody's like 10 feet apart. But we're still starting with those small numbers so that we can gradually increase to ensure that we're restarting safely.
Okay. Will facilities be able to help obtain disinfecting wipes for equipment that can't be sprayed down with alcohol?
Susan, you have a response to that one?
So I don't see her on the call right now.
Oh, she left. Okay, so I believe if your piece of equipment cannot be wiped with the disinfectant and the cloths that facilities is providing, then it will be your responsibility to provide that type of cleaning and disinfection for that equipment.
What is the face covering policy in the building? Will the building provide masks or the research lab, or will the research labs provide masks?
So for right now, if you come into the building without a mask, you will be provided a surgical mask. But we're asking everyone to come in with their own masks, because you will have a mask in the city of New York. And as you come into the building, you will still have a mask. But those surgical masks or any kind of cloth covering may not be adequate if you are doing chemical related or whatever. It may not be a proper protection for the research in your lab. You should continue to use whatever PPE you had prior to COVID in your lab for the research in your lab. The other thing that I'll say is that common areas, we're asking everyone to have their masks on, same as in the city of New York. If you're alone in your lab, if you're alone in your office, you are not mandated to have your mask on. But if you're in the common areas of the building, the elevators, the lobby area, which will be closed off, but you're coming in and out, the stairwells, we're asking everyone have a mask on at that time.
Okay, and we have a question on what's going to be done about the handles to prevent cross-contamination, like the door handles.
So facilities, that was on their list. They included door handles on the things that they would wipe down prior to coming back to campus, and also daily as the cleaning staff goes through the building daily. Now, that's their frequency of doing their cleaning and disinfection.
Okay. Besides the occupancy, is there also a time limit to remain in the lab?
That's between you and your chair, you and your departments. So I'll answer it two ways because I don't know exactly what is meant. So we're hoping that people don't dominate the occupancy such that you come in Monday through Friday from 7 to 7 or 7 to 10, that one person. We're hoping that there will be shifts and you come in when you need to get your work done and you leave to analyze your work. The other question that I think is being asked is, can you work after 10 p.m.? Or I'll answer that question. The answer is yes, that the building, you will not have a security guard there, but you will be able to gain access if you have a card, a key card. But I, again, would not recommend folks doing hazardous type research after hours.
Okay. Different Steinman floors do not have the same levels of activity. Some floors have heavy research usage and others not so much. Will this be taken into account?
As I said before, we would hope that all 20 people are not on the 4th floor. You know, we hope that whatever the level of occupancy on that floor allows you to social distance and can be in the general range of the 20 to 25%. If we're, you know, restarting successfully, then those are the areas that may be able to grow at a faster rate. But initially we're asking, in order for the building to be at 20 to 25%, we're asking for the floors to keep it at 20 to 25%.
Has key card access been reactivated?
I don't know. I was told by some that it was not ever deactivated, but the plan is that it will be reactivated when we phase in research to begin in the labs.
Okay, thank you. Those are all the questions I have. Does anyone have any additional questions? Please enter them in the chat.
So what I will say is, thank you guys. We're trying to get our research back into the labs as soon as possible. In the meantime, continue to do what you're doing. And if we can get Steinman opened, we're doing it as quickly as we can. When we get it open, we'll let you know. I'd also say, remember, we're trying to do this safely. Remember that you guys should also stay safe, because with the city reopening and also going into phase 2, there may be pockets where people don't necessarily do the social distancing or wear the masks. So the last thing we want to happen is that someone from the Grove School of Engineering is injured or contracts the virus and either spreads it or does not successfully recover. So we're trying to do this, keeping in mind that we have a huge staff and we all want to stay safe. How's that? So again, by my watch, I'm almost at 2 o'clock. And if there are additional questions, send me an email. As we said before, this was recorded and it will be posted on the Grove School of Engineering website, and the slides will also be available. So thank you. I'll stop sharing my screen and have a good day.